The following program is brought to you by the Baker & Baker Foundation and is a production of the Columbia Museum of Art.
Hi, and welcome to the More Than Rhythm podcast. I'm Dr. Birgitta Johnson, host and ethnomusicologist. Welcome back. I'm Birgitta Johnson. Conceived in the 60s and birthed in the 70s, funk represents the intersections of soul, jazz, and rock drenched in psychedelic grooves. Funk uplifts as it helps people to get down. Funk harnesses the Black musical genius of the past and forever pushes towards imagined futures. The mother of disco and the father of hip-hop, funk is still a deep well for modern Black music of all genres, even in the 21st century. From Outkast and Kendrick Lamar to Kamasi Washington and Trombone Shorty, funk's abilities to straddle and break stylistic barriers while giving powerful messages of unity, freedom, and self-expression is why More Than Rhythm, a Black music series, is ending its third season with the Psycodelics. The legacy of funk is alive and well in the hands of this six-piece band who serves heavy, uncut funk everywhere they go. Award City Paper's Soul and R&B Act of the Year, please welcome to the Binder Podcast, Cam Wescott and Noah Jones of Charleston's own Psycodelics.
Howdy.
Hey, what's happening?
Thanks for having us.
All right.
Yeah.
So, a funk band from Charleston in the 2020s. How did it happen? How?
Jones, how'd it happen, Jones?
Oh, man. Well, we'll have to go back to 2016.
Yeah.
Well, actually, 2015.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because I was going into my senior year, and Cam was entering as a freshman.
Yeah.
Let me do the math. You said 2015, 2016. Okay, continue. There we go.
So we went to Charleston County School of the Arts.
All right.
I had been going from 6th grade all the way up, and I was a band major there. But I also played piano in the jazz band.
Okay.
And we can get down that rabbit hole later about how I found the piano. But I did, and piano became my main thing, even though I was a band major. And as a band major, before every year, we had a summer camp.
Mm-hmm.
Just to kind of like orientate the freshmen, as well as to just kind of get ready for the school year. And so, enter Cam. I knew I wanted to play just fun music. You know, I was writing all the time, and I always said I'm a writer more than a musician. You know, like I just love creating new music. And I heard Cam play after rehearsal one of those days at band camp on the drums. I was just like, man, well, dang.
I must have been doing something nice.
Yeah, you were.
A little something slight.
Yeah. So I knew by the end of band camp that Cam was going to be something really special. And I just wanted to be a part of his journey. And so going into the school year, we started a project with our other good friend, McCarthy. Mm-hmm. And our name was Manchild.
Okay.
And it was it was like jazz fusion, instrumental, very much influenced by Herbie Hancock and Weather Report and stuff like that.
I love it.
And throughout that year, we just made music and became close as friends naturally. And
since then, we've been in it. Well,
yeah.
So this is like the core. The core of Psychedelics is yourself and who else?
Cam.
Yeah.
So
you are the first two.
Yeah. Essentially, yeah. So I ended up graduating in 2016, and I did attend College of Charleston. So I stayed in Charleston.
Okay.
And, you know, I'm going through that whole transition, and he's going through high school. Mm. And, you know, we kept, as friends, we would hang out. He'd come over to my spot downtown all the time, and we just kept up, you know. Mm-hmm. And around 2020, when COVID happened, we had both been on our own individual journeys and met friends along the way. And two of those people was Whit Byrne and Sean Bing.
Yep.
So Sean's your drummer, right? Mm-hmm. And then Whit is guitar?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And when COVID hit, we were all at home, and we were just like, let's just get up, you know, and jam, you know, just do something.
Yeah.
and they came over to my house one night, and I felt like everyone in the room just had this click in their head. We're like, oh my gosh, we got something here.
Yeah, and we was all using whammies.
Yeah, whammy pedals.
So everybody was like on the same wave. It was getting real weird, musically, but I don't think anybody minded that, It was.
So you saying the funk found you through the whammy pedals? Is that what happened?
Honestly, you know what?
It helped express.
It definitely did help us get all the way to where we was going,
And I don't think any of us have one now.
No, we don't even use it now. I'm gonna get it fixed. Well, see, the whole thing was I was borrowing Wits from the beginning of this band's inception. I just took care of his whammy pedal up until I had to, I got to send it on back to the factory. So now everybody's is out of commission.
Wow.
And for anyone who's wondering what the heck
exactly tell us, you guys, tell us.
It's what's the brand?
Digitech.
Digitech. Yeah. Made famous by the one and only Mono Neon.
Yes.
Here we go.
So if you're wondering how he does what he does, he's using a whammy pedal.
Mm-hmm.
And pedals are important to funk.
Oh yeah.
Google
sound.
Larry Graham and say pedals are important to funk.
Yeah. Even Boosie with the space-based station, being hung up in stadiums in the middle of the arena, and it rotates like a organ Leslie.
So 2020 comes around, you have a moment around your whammy pedals, and so the idea, well, let's have a funk band. How does that happen in the 2020s? We got so many types of music floating around. You mentioned Mono Neon a couple of seconds ago. How do you decide I'm going to dive into that river of music?
Well, I think it was natural. It was it was natural to go down that lane because we're all very influenced by that music. Noah grew up listening to that music. He talks a lot about how his dad showed him, Earth, Wind and Fire and Sly and the Family Stone and Parliament, and that was his upbringing. And I was exposed to a lot of that music later. I ended up finding my dad's record collection when I was like 18 or 19. So I got into it kind of late, but it was always there because I listened to a lot of gospel, like quartet. And so it
Put
gets
a pit in that quartet. Come on, go ahead and sing. We'll come back to that.
It gets funky in the quartet.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
I had a thought when I heard somebody say, I heard some quartets. That's a quartet vocal.
Lee Williams and the Canton Spirituals.
Yes,
and,
QCs.
Yes. Yeah. So that was my thing growing up, and so it wasn't hard to get into funk.
Right. Okay.
But I would say, I was always into James Brown. I was always into Michael Jackson. Those are
yes.
abbreviation, but I was always into that. But then I would say when I finally knew that I wanted to do funk in my life, as something that I could do as maybe a career or even just having fun with that most of the time in my life, it was Parliament, and hearing that Mothership connection.
The Mothership came and got you, huh?
Yep, so did. I got bit by the bug.
Hey.
So.
That is great because I was thinking about there's so many models of funk out, and a lot of times we think about funk, we think about the 60s and 70s, but funk kept going. And so you got your 80s and your 80s and 90s. Of course, Cameo played all the way through the 80s.
Right.
I remember playing Cameo in my orchestra.
Wow.
So we were on strings playing Word Up, right?
Hey.
And Michael Jackson and everybody else.
Yes.
And so the funk kept going, and then you had, funk coming back around in the 90s when the hip hop artists started to sample them and bring them back around. Some people got introduced to Parliament through the De La Soul albums and all that, and a lot of that 90s hip hop. They love funk. Your West Coasters, they love the funk. So I'm thinking when you think about your psychedelic sound, because I've heard some psychedelic. I like it. I like what y'all doing. When I was talking to Wilson, I was like, they doing heavy funk.
Yeah.
This ain't no wedding reunion cover band. They doing funk. So when you think about the psychedelic sound, what are some of your chief influences? You mentioned Sly and the Family Stone and Michael Jackson because he is funky. That's the best thing about Michael. Stuff we love about Michael is the funkiness that he pulled from some of these artists in his pop. But what are some of your chief influences in the funk? We're going to start with funk first, and then we can get to the other ones.
Yeah,
well, you're definitely right about Sly.
Okay, yeah.
Definitely Sly. I mean, for me, like you mentioned, my dad really, really just gave me everything I needed to explore black music, at an early age. And Sly, James Brown. I mean, the biggest, in my opinion, probably is Parliament. I mean, it is just inescapable, the spirituality that is also involved with their music.
Right.
It's almost like, we grew up in church, and like being able to experience people, experiencing something through the music and having this kind of musical catharsis. Parliament, to me, also did the same thing, just not in the context of religion, but it felt religious in a sense, So for me, I mean, Stevie Wonder.
Oh yeah.
I mean, he was funky.
Yeah.
But he also, just as a lyricist, writer, piano player, keyboard player, is all around my number one and biggest influence in my life, musically.
Yeah.
To name a few.
Yeah, man. You hit a good few of mine that I would have said. I throw in Prince in there.
Yes.
I found Prince, another person I found later on. When I first heard Prince, I was like, man, he can't sing. I didn't know nothing.
Like blasphemy.
Yeah, I'm like 13. I'm like, he can't sing. I didn't know nothing about music. I didn't understand that a man could sing in falsetto and it'd be okay.
And you're the falsetto singer over here.
Right. You dig? So it took a minute for me to come around, but then I just listened to it, and I had no choice but to, give into that, that Minneapolis sound. And him taking all of the same bands that we just named,
right,
and putting it into one cohesive sound that didn't sound like anything,
Right.
It was fresh. So
definitely, I like that. You got like elite parenting, and then funk kind of coming back and getting you. You mentioned people like Stevie Wonder and other genres, because you mentioned gospel earlier. So what other genres? Because when I remember looking at your website, and we'll come back to this in a second, I guess, the modern Black American music.
Yeah.
We're going to come back to that tag in a second. But in your other influences, what other things that kind of influence how you do music? Because you guys play with other bands. I know we may have mentioned that a little earlier, but I remember looking around and I was like, oh, they play a lot of bands. They play they play around. So it's, you have Psycodelics, but you also are musicians when you are expressing these other genres. But within funk, what other things are you pulling from as influences?
A big one, I think, is J Dilla.
Yeah.
I mean, we're also hip hop heads, like you said, De La Soul earlier, The Far Side,
Tribe,
Jungle Brothers, The Roots,
Tribe Called Quest,
all worked with or were directly influenced by J Dilla.
Yeah.
And I remember I've discovered that later because, like I said, my dad was only showing me all this old school stuff, and so that's what I listened to, and I didn't really have an attraction to hip hop until I got to college, honestly, and I was studying jazz piano and discovering all these jazz archives and how they were sampled by all these groups,
artists, right?
And producers, and the one to really kind of pave the way was J Dilla.
Right. That ear, and like the crates you both discovered through your parents is what he was pulling from, basically.
Right.
That's it, because everything you described as your other influences, that's what they were sampling. It had that kind of, they took the funk to this other level, but it was still keeping the essence of it. And so you guys are just basically connecting the dots. I love it because you mentioned being in high school in 2015. That means if you can't see them, they are quite young. And so when I saw you, I was like, wow, these are young people doing funk for real. And so one, it's encouraging and inspiring, but it's telling you about the longevity of this genre. People see genre as kind of an era thing where it comes and goes, but true rooted music keeps going. It keeps finding lives. And so when I mentioned funk in the 80s, I was like, Cameo, there was a whole bunch of people, a whole bunch of those funk bands. They didn't stop in the 70s. They just kept on going. Absolutely. And then, of course, they became the bedrock of a lot of our best hip-hop samples. And now you can buy those same samples in these little loop programs. All of those are, soul and funk samples.
We must have forgotten the same people. Did it happen now for you? I look around and I just don't have a thing.
Once again, I'll bring up your website because it doesn't say psychedelics.com. It says Modern Black American Music. And of course, I was like, oh, More Than Rhythm, you need to be here. They need to be here. Yeah. And I loved seeing that because we're in this weird place where on one hand, you have this kind of unapologetic cultural pride that's going on. Everybody loves it. Black is beautiful, black is back, black girl magic, all those things. And then at the same time, you have this digital erasure that's happening of the legacy. So when you see stuff on websites, you have the industry kind of flattening things out. You also have this information manipulation where you will see a TikTok or a YouTube or Instagram and they don't mention anything about the roots, anything about the people. They just have people doing sounds. And so you have this kind of, balance of everybody's shouting things out, and then you look in the spaces and they are kind of muting things and watering things down. So why was it important for you to call, this funk and what you're doing and use this phrase modern Black American music?
So for me, I first heard that term used by Nicholas Payton, who's a pretty well-known trumpet player in the jazz realm. And he calls modern music of today that's influenced by jazz, soul, R&B, funk. He calls it modern Black American music. And I thought that was very fitting because it's hard to put us into a genre sometimes,
right.
Even though it is a funky band, we'll end up doing like a pop type, happy-go-lucky.
Yeah.
We might mess around and do something like that.
Right.
Or a very slow, ballad, something almost cinematic in a way.
Right, right.
It doesn't have to have any chunking guitars, any slapping bass, the beat don't gotta be grooving hard with the claps on the 2 and the 4, doesn't have to be the formulaic funk, to be funky.
Right.
But I think that that's something that, we never wanted to get too deep into anyways, was, being held down by the one thing.
Yeah, and I like to think of it as kind of the theme of what we've been talking about is a legacy of music here, from jazz to soul and the blues and R&B to funk to hip hop. It's
Black American music.
It's Black American music. And if I can live my life and just be a part of the fabric, that quilt, I would die happy. I just want to further that legacy, And that's just what it is. We didn't, like you said, we're not trying to box ourselves into one genre here because Black American music is so much more. It's three-dimensional. It's just
facts.
Yeah, there's just a lot to it.
And it flows because I always describe funk as a fusion of a lot of things that came before in a wonderful way. Of course, you have these kind of core aesthetics to happen, but they do flow. Because I remember when I talk about it in my classes, I always show Larry Graham Central Station when they were on Soul Train. They went on Soul Train a couple of times. But one time they went on there and they did a song called Pow.
Oh, yeah.
Pow, I shot you, caught you with your funk down. And it's exactly, the jam.
Yeah.
But they basically, the hook is what did you expect? You thought he was going to play a little Beethoven. And they break out in like a Bach invention style. Then they say, what do you expect? We're going to do some little, what do you say, country. They did a little crunchy breakdown. So in this funk song, they're literally doing 4 or 5 genres, and it's almost like a show band piece, right? And so funk was always playing with the question of genre more than any other genre, except for when jazz gets towards the late 20th century. They start, what is jazz? Jazz is dead. But funk was always playing with sound, talking about other sounds, Parliament talking about One Nation Under the Groove, and they were also kind of tongue-in-cheek talking about disco being trapped in a box. And so I love that you get said that line about legacy. I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
Because that's literally what we want. And when we think about our musicians and people say, well, they're not doing this and they're not doing that. I say, no, people are doing it. And I think it's the exposure that we're talking about now. People don't get to see it as much. And I think we're in a great era where we can turn on a YouTube and see a Psychedelics doing it.
Hey y'all, producer Drew here, with a quick question. Are you a CMA member? Relax, it's fine. I can't hear your answer anyway. But if you are, I just wanted to say thanks. And if you're not, maybe stick around for a second before you hit skip forward on your podcast app. CMA memberships put art to work for your community, connecting visitors from all walks of life with unforgettable creative experiences. Your support helps make art accessible, helping the museum keep community benefits like free admission days available to the public each month. It helps support our public programming, including this podcast, and allows us to continue to bring you new and exciting art exhibitions every year. Of course, you get plenty of perks too, including priority registration for events, special discounts on classes, camps, and merchandise, and admission not only to the CMA, but over 150 Southeastern museums. At the CMA, inspiration is around every corner, and it's all thanks to you. Fuel creativity and South Carolina with a CMA membership. Now, thank you, and back to the show.
So we appreciate you getting down to it. This is another one right here. My brother Noah Jones and Sean Bell. We appreciate you doing this. We want to take it slow.
Mentioned something earlier I want to go back to, and this is actually what kind of turned my head. Wilson and I look for bands and we're looking for people, and I think he sent me the link to Psycodelics, and I said, okay, and I was just listening. I said, okay, they funky, they whatever, it's the groove. And oftentimes in funk we talk about the groove, right? Mm-hmm. And then I heard these vocals and I kept saying, they singing. And then of course I was watching the Grilled Cheese show from 2022, and you mentioned that falsetto earlier.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, who is doing that? Because I know that's not the bass guy.
Yeah.
And I kept looking around. Your drummer, Sean.
Yeah.
Can we get a drummer some? I was like,
yeah.
You guys are also giving the vocal aesthetics of funk.
Yeah.
Where it kind of sounds churchy, it's raspy, it's kind of rocky, it's got all these things happening. And when I hear a lot of people doing modern interpretations of funk, they don't do the vocal parts.
Right.
They don't do the vocals.
Right,
I'm like,
yeah. They're not even concerned with it.
They're not even concerned. I said, most of your funk bands are great singers.
Yeah.
Where is the vocals and the harmonies? And so that's what built out the funk sound. So basically, where did that come from?
Well, all of it goes back to church, like in church, if you can't sing well, they're going to let you know,
Yeah, absolutely.
Even if they don't say nothing,
Exactly.
Even if they don't say that it's bad, they're going to let you know.
They're going to let you know.
That you got some work to do before you can minister in that way to a crowd, you
right.
know, and that's the same thing we doing when we on the stage, it's not church, it's not a church building, but at the same time, like, our voices are what people are going to hear. It's going to resonate for about an hour to an hour and a half, and it could change their lives. So whatever you're saying has to be, the most profound thing you could possibly get out at that time. It doesn't have to be the most profound thing ever, but it has to be 100% of your effort put into that. And so, we take a lot of pride in the fact that you even brought that up,
Oh, yeah.
Like,
I was typing something.
Yeah.
I was like, wait a minute now. Who else is singing? Because I heard multiple male voices doing falsetto. Once again, you mentioned Prince.
Yeah.
That falsetto singing for anybody But particularly male singers, it makes a difference because you can't just be singing high. You have to be on pitch, and you have to have, that character to it. And it can't sound corny and weird.
Right.
So it's a lot going on. And I know you mentioned the influence of gospel music, and that's where the male falsetto and black music kind of lives now.
Right.
Not just high tenor singers, but that soulful, like you said, that transcendence going to, make that impact. That vocal thing often gets left off. They want to get the grooves and the beats and everybody got the bass going and 15 different pedals going, and they want all these sounds, and everybody's doing stuff.
Right.
But the vocal parts gets you to that message you guys are talking about, how you're trying to change people's lives and funk being transcended just like a church experience. I mean, they literally said in that song, I think it was P-Funk, he said funk not only moves, it removes. Put your hand on the speaker, you can feel something. So they were going for more than just dance music. They were really trying to deal with the metaphysics of the thing. That's why they love to talk about Parliament being Afrofuturistic.
Right.
They were thinking about the whole dimensional parts of this experience, and so I am delighted. Every time y'all say something, I'm like, amen. You preaching, Cam. You preaching, Cam. Get it.
This pain in my chest, and I can't rest at night. It's burning deep down inside me. May I tell you why? Oh yeah, I've got the heart.
I think you're actually our first full band. We've had bands come through, but they are like put together for the artists that were with them. You guys are actually the self-contained band. And you mentioned COVID earlier. Do you see the live music scene, particularly, I know you do a lot of touring around the Southeast. And of course, I think you've been around the country too. I've seen y'all get out and about.
Yeah.
Do you see the live music scene kind of opening up on an upswing since the pandemic kind of, did what it did and we're back outside, as they say?
What you think, Jones?
I think it's complicated.
Say it. Talk about it.
I mean, well, all right. So you have these major festivals like Bonnaroo and Lollapalooza and what's the other? Coachella. I believe Bonnaroo and Coachella had like record low, pre-sale tickets.
Because it's expensive, yeah.
It is expensive. And also, me personally, I'm not overwhelmingly enticed to go, pay this much for a ticket to see maybe two artists that I really do want to see. And I don't know if that's a sentiment felt by majority of my age group, who are majority of the ones attending these events. I'm surprised and I'm kind of confused as to why this is happening. But at the same time, I do think that, bands like us and where we're at, it's a renaissance.
Yeah.
Because there's just so many talented young people every day starting up something, starting a new Instagram account, starting a TikTok or whatever, getting out into the world. And it's like every day I'm discovering somebody new who is furthering this legacy that we're talking about. So, on paper, it seems like we're in a very confusing period of, is live music back? But at the same time, I do believe that there's still this overwhelming movement happening in our generation that is still furthering these legacies.
And I would say I've seen the standards, if you will, for what it takes to be a live musician kind of go up very slowly, but it is going up, and people are just kind of realizing that, that fast food type music where you're just making it real quick. There's no effort put into it. There's nothing put into it. You put it out for people to consume, and when they're done with that, you got some more stuff for them. And then, you just keep doing that, feeding them this kind of lifeless music, right? And I think people are realizing, like I said, that you just can't get on the stage and do whatever.
Right.
They want to see a show,
Yes.
That's why you see all these documentaries and all these biopics coming out of older artists, because that's what people are itching for.
Right.
Bohemian Rhapsody was a huge success because people just want to see something like that again. A band like Queen on stage where they ripping and the crowd is into it and nobody's really on their phone, like, you know, people got their, you know, their camcorder or whatever, you know, to take a few videos, maybe 30 seconds worth of VHS footage that they snuck in, you know, in their trench coat or whatever.
Right.
But, you know.
I saw the episode.
You know, so it's like people just want to get into it and see things like that again. So I think getting into this, you know, new era of music and what we're trying to do, I do think eventually it'll come back in a way that we might not even be expecting.
Yeah,
You know?
I totally agree. You guys are spot on, and it made me think about it. Hearing someone from your perspective and where you are, about 2 days ago, I saw this guy who went to see Future in Atlanta, and he was like, "I'm sorry, it was horrible."
Oh,
He
man.
said, because he basically was saying what you're saying. There was no show.
Yeah.
They didn't have any lights. He didn't have any dancers. It was just, he basically played a very small slice of his music. There was no presentation. And so people want a show. And so if you're paying all this money to go see these festivals and half the people there are just singing to a track,
Right.
and they're not putting anything into it, they're not stringing in. He wasn't even mixing his songs together. He was just there. He had a DJ and they didn't even mix anything. They didn't have a pre-show. There's another show that happened this week where the artists put on commercials for the first hour before they came out, no opening act. People are like, how dare you? Because one, it costs a lot to come here.
Yeah.
But to your point, and you mentioned the festivals, in my generation, we had the major venues, your big venues, your big arena tours, you had your big festivals, and you had the mid-range venues and tours, where it's not 80 people every day on a bill, and I got to pay $500 to come see, like you said, 3 people.
Right.
And so they got rid of a lot of those. Your you know, Live Nations, Clear Channel, whatever the people that happened in the 2000s, they got rid of your mid-level venues where you don't have the bands who give a show who can't sell out 40,000 tickets, but definitely can sell 10,000. There's not a lot of those left. And then the ones that are left are doing well. And you have your mid-level clubs. A lot of cities don't like clubs. And it's like, but you want people to come and pay for liquor and money and whatever. And so you keep closing down venues. And so I think you're right. We're at a point because now people are doing it online. And they build their audiences, and then their audience follow them. And the business hadn't caught up to the fact that people will follow talent. They will follow someone who's actually put craft together. Because I saw your Instagram. People in the comments, they're like, where are they going to play next? And that's what people are missing. People, when they see it and they know it, they will go get it. They will find it. They will drive to get to it. I heard you have an album coming out, new music, and so can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. Well, we started recording a while ago. We started recording back in 2021. So it had been like maybe a year after we started. And the plan was to put music out back then. But we had a few delays, you know. Sonically, we weren't, you know, happy with what we were getting. Weren't able to really capture the sound the way we wanted to, you know, the way we hear it when we play it live or the way that other people tell us, you know, how it feels to them, you know. Couldn't get that same thing. So some time went by and we recorded at a few different places, recorded plenty of demos now because we're not going to use them. But, you know, at the time they were going to be, you know, the records. So there's plenty of versions of the songs that we're going to put out, you know, that are fully recorded, that just aren't, you know, going to be the final version. But, you know, it started back in 2021. And then I would say, when did we meet Zutell? This year? Well, not meet him, but you know, when
we
did start
started,
getting up with him?
I think about a year ago, around there.
Yeah. Matt Zutell at Coast Records in Charleston. He's a part of a band out there as well called Human Resources. And yeah.
HR.
HR. Exactly.
And him and the bassist from HR, Aaron Utterback, they own a space where Aaron is doing his graphic design work. So we get Aaron to do all our posters and stuff for us now. And Matt Zutell is doing the recording on the other side, and he has a full studio setup, isolation booth. And so once we started getting up with Matt Zutell, we found that he was capturing the sound the way that we heard it in our head.
Yeah.
You know, and it took little to nothing to get there. You know, he'd maybe throw some reverb on it, and now it's like, oh,
that's it.
This is amazing. You know, whereas, you know, like we didn't want to have to do a whole bunch of stuff and like editing.
In post, yeah.
Yeah, you know, we wanted to just, because when we playing
live. That's the
live.
real deal. You ain't trying to cheat and post. You're not trying to cheat and post.
Right. You know, I think one of the biggest disappointments I learned was that Earth, Wind & Fire used to go back and overdub their vocals on their live albums. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, no, we ain't doing it. Yeah. I ain't letting nobody down 7 years from now when they get to doing their deep dives on YouTube and all that stuff like I'll be doing.
Oh, yeah.
Because I know it's going to be
they had to do it because they don't have the fancy mics we have.
Right. And that's the thing. So I'm, you know, right now it's just like, all right, we got to record this music, get it down, capture it the best way we possibly can, and still make it not sound raw like it's, you know, amateur. You know, you don't want it to sound like a demo. You know, you want it to sound like some guys got together in a nice, very nice recording studio and laid something down. And so I think that's where we at right now, sonically. And so, you know.
It's been funny because, you know, we've been around since 2020.
Yeah.
And in Charleston, being Charleston, we were able to develop just a really great base of people who really appreciate what we were doing. And for years, when is the music coming out? Because we
still get that, you know.
This is the first batch of music we're gonna put out as a band, and I just wanted to address all of those people. You know,
the stakes is high. Man.
That's literally what I was gonna say. Is that the stakes are high, you know, for a band like us, because I mean, like you guys said, it's far and few between to really see what we're doing. You know, in this modern age,
right?
Truly going for it, like,
and at your age. Because you see a lot of the older funk, funketeers, old funk artists are out.
That's what they are.
Yeah, the funketeers are out, but they're no longer in their prime. And so when they're playing with bands, you can tell the bands didn't come up with the music. They're not trying to recreate what, you know, that funk aesthetic, but try to recreate the albums, but not the funk aesthetic. And so you mentioned, so you recorded all over Charleston, or where did you record?
A couple spots. We recorded at a place in Barnwell.
Red
Barnwell. Is it Barnwell, South Carolina?
Yeah.
There we go. Okay, okay.
Yeah. Another spot in Charleston, and like you were saying, we weren't really finding what we were looking for sonically at those places. You know, they're very capable and very talented people, but, you know, like you said, the stakes are high for us. So we just really wanted to make sure that we were sure.
Right.
And so we found the space.
Yeah.
And going into a studio rather than what some people can do, they can cheat. You know, they can just record things on stems and slap it together in the studio. Or what people assume is, oh, I got to go to Atlanta, or I got to go to, you know, a big city and get in the booth, and we got to spend a whole bunch of money. When you think about recording in funk artists, that is a thing. I remember reading one of my mentors talking about how James Brown hated his Polydor recordings. Because the producers went back and cleaned up everything. Right. He's like, I hate they took my sound. You know, I knew what I wanted, but they went in the studio and they were basically, you know, engineers who were not really versed in the funk.
Right.
They didn't know about the heavy uncut funk.
Right.
And so the rawness of those recordings was missing. He didn't really like them. He said, that's not me. That's not my sound. And so you do have within funk in particular this awareness of aesthetic. It just can't be anything. Because I remember early 2000s, I used to live in California, and back in those days, this was the Napster days. If you remember iMeme, anybody remember iMeme?
Yeah.
iMeme and Napster, bands would just put anything out. They said, we're going to do it something else. And so it was almost like an Easter egg. Which version do you have? And so they would do recordings of live stuff, or just this is in progress. And then when they got to the album, it was something totally different. And so, you know, now we're different. You don't want just any old thing out, because you said the stakes are high, and then people tend to, if they hear it and they don't like it, they give you 20 seconds. After that, they don't come back.
Yeah.
You know, unless somebody pulls them back. But by and large, I think it's almost like a lot more pressure on newer artists to get it out and make it sound like what you want it to sound like. Very few people are like I would say like Willow Smith, where she gets to explore 1,000 genres in a decade,
Right.
and you know, and figure out what she's going to do, and everything comes out, as opposed to it flops and you're never coming out again. Most people don't have that. They don't have that space to kind of play out and get something out, and then tweak it and figure it out, and then develop and grow. You kind of have to work on it behind the scenes, which other artists used to do back in the day. They would take 2 and 3 years to make a record. Mention some songs you're going to do is going to sound different. Does Hot sound like it did in 2022?
Sounds really close.
Ladybug is still in there?
Oh, yeah. Hopefully all the stuff sounds better than it did in 2022.
I mean, Ladybug, I was like, oh, okay, they about to put that Minneapolis funk on us.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's certain songs that, you know, we don't change the groove, if you will. You know what I'm saying? Like, if there's a groove, and that groove is part of what makes the song, then we try to, you know, stay on that, you know. Like, if it's something that you could put the words over any type of groove, then, you know, we do that kind of stuff, or we'll mess around with things and try different things just to see what we like, you know. But as far as, like, Hots, you know, Ladybug, all that stuff is going to be, you know, just like you heard it, you know, back in 2022. We're going to do... probably Ooh, I Want to Let You Know, which we got a lot of new songs, you know, that there aren't any videos of them, you know, on YouTube or on Facebook or Instagram. We've been learning some Isley Brothers tunes because putting together a tribute back down in Charleston.
Oh, yeah.
And eventually we've been talking about taking that and doing that at certain festivals and stuff, you know. There's a band that we're friends with, Doom Flamingo, and we share Sean Bing, the drummer. But they do a show called Queen is Doomed, where they perform Queen music, and but they put their own kind of spin on it, you know, while staying true to the songs. So we kind of want to do that with Isley Brothers, you know.
Exactly. I love it, because, you know, I like some Isleys as well. I love that Fight the Power. That's funky.
Oh,
yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
But, yeah, that sounds great. So thank you for hanging out.
Yes, of course.
It's been great here at the Binder Podcast, and we'll see you on September 6th for the show. And then also I want to thank our producer, Drew, for working in the booth for over the years, and for this More Than Rhythm, a Black Music Series train. It's been awesome, and we will see you next time.
Yeah, real quick, I just wanted to shout out the band, everybody that's not here, you know, Whit, Jimmy, DeMario, Sean, and our managers, you know, that make things shake. Appreciate y'all.
Most definitely. Love the band.
Yes.
The More Than Rhythm podcast is a production of the Columbia Museum of Art. Recording and editing by Drew Barron. Additional recording support by Austin Sims. Today's episode was hosted by Dr. Birgitta Johnson, and today's guests were Cameron Wescott and Noah Jones, whose group, the Psycodelics, you heard throughout the episode. Additional production for the series is done by me, Wilson Boehm. Additional assistance by Vic Johnson. Funding for this series is made possible by the Baker and Baker Foundation. Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much, Columbia. With the Psycodelics. Make sure you love one another when you get out of here.